Okay, so with that, what we're doing, if you, we're going to basically consolidate the first time, just sort of, it's kind of like a round table. Who was in the Athanatos tent to begin with?
Derek and
So,
I were up this morning.
okay. So, you know, I think you should say at least a few words about your topic and maybe talk about it. You also at least deliver on what we advertise.
Okay, absolutely. My name's Joe Courtemanche. I'm the award-winning author of The Salt on St. Agnes, available on Amazon. Boy, you all knew that. Okay, so my talk this morning is on biblical archetypes in modern literature and how you can incorporate them. The first thing I want to say is, if any of you writes a book featuring Esther, I'm going to hunt you down like a dog, because there are so many contemporary fiction books in women's Christian fiction based on the life of Esther and Ruth, especially those two, that I could just pitch over dead every time I go to a writer's conference and somebody says, I've written the most amazing book and it's based on Esther, right? Yeah. So why are we mining this one shaft in one part of the Old Testament over and over and over again?
It's probably because of, is this a rhetorical question, or were you
like, I got ideas. Yeah, it's just fast running interactive.
You just touched upon a frustration of mine, because most literature, and especially Christian one, I'd say maybe 75, 80, possibly 90% is all marketed towards women.
Oh, yeah. Almost all.
And I don't know if men have just stopped reading, or it's just there's not enough interesting stuff for men to read anymore, or it's just American men just kind of find it effeminate anyway. And I can tell you this as someone who writes poetry, that that's considered extremely feminine, and there's not too many men that read it, even less than write it. And so so there's a stigma based on it, and either the feminization of the church and the feminization of literature combining. So almost all of it's going to be marketed towards women right now. And marketers only, marketers, we're talking to somebody else that they've got no imagination. They don't know. They're running the literary world, and all they know is what sold yesterday. And they can't recognize anything good, innovative, or new. All they know is what sold yesterday, and that's what I'm going to sell today.
And that's exactly why they keep going back and mining these few things. I've talked to a lot of agents and publishers who feel that I'm absolutely no threat of ever pitching them anything because I use explosives in my books. And they're quite blunt about it. It's like, well, buggies and bonnets sell.
Yep.
And so if you can put a chaste Amish girl who finds for the bishop's son on the cover, or whip out another version of Esther or Ruth or whatever, you're going to sell the book to the publisher, because they've got absolutely no problem with it. They've got a marketing channel set up, they've got focus groups, they've got readers lists. They know that no matter how much that book sucks, as long as it's not heretical, they're going to be able to pitch it out there and sell enough copies to justify their existence. But there's so many other great stories in the Bible that we can take. And even going past the Bible, and the title of the talk is about the biblical architecture, but I also want to extend that to modern Christian architecture.
You probably want to come up here, honestly, right now.
All the way up here.
So if you take people from the early church, some of the heroes of the early church, and expand that literature and even move into the Renaissance era figures of the church, why can't you have an absolute blockbuster about somebody that's modeled on the Catholic priest that died in Auschwitz? Or take Sister Teresa. I've been at some of her hospitals in third world countries. There are stories in each one of those places that would lay your soul low and open you to God. So for us to focus on that one specific set of people from the Old Testament, kind of waste of time. Cecil B. DeMille and some of those people in Hollywood totally got the concept. Look at Ben-Hur and some of the other stories from that era. Amazing blockbusters. The Ten Commandments. Could you find a more simple foundation for a story than, hey, let's do the Moses thing and roll that out with all the splendor of pomp, and really be still fairly true to the biblical teachings of that time. People, I think, would pick that stuff up, and it doesn't have to be wussified books. You can have books that have a great adult content, a great male content. So you don't have to talk down to people pretty much they're 13-year-olds who are just exploring the world. And I think it's incumbent upon us to build characters like that. And characters who are fun and different. Paul Bennett's book is really a good example of that. He's got a complex character during the Civil War period that I couldn't believe how good that character was. I was just amazed. And Jamie's Pastor Butch character, you rocking with that. That guy's like a lot of pastors I know. I realized
hapless.
Yeah, completely hapless. No, Pastor Daniels, if you're watching, I am sorry. But why are we not using the full pantheon of interesting characters from the Christian book, and even Old Testament Jews, some of the prophets, and writing modernized versions of them? Because if you can take Esther and set her in a 21st century television station in Keokuk, Iowa, and write some middling, mediocre, modern female fiction piece on it, why can't you go back and pick up Amos or Isaiah or one of the other prophets and write a blockbuster that you pick that up and set it in the modern era? Miracles did not end with the completion of Revelation. God's still doing it every day. And why can't there be prophetic characters with those kinds of powers in our modern world who are not witches, who are not an abomination, but they're what we experience and you just don't even know what it is yet? My friend Jim Rupert writes a whole bunch of Christian books where he gives people the powers that are in the Gospels that Jesus said all of us are to have. And he uses it. He uses it brilliantly. And that's the whole point of what I'm saying is we can do that too. We don't have to be mediocre. We can expand it. We can have vibrant stories. But let's steal them as much as we can from the Bible and reformat them for today. Because then that allows you to put that after the book is completed section and it's the quiz or it's the learning point, so however you fashion it, and your postscript to say, and you know what, this is all the story of the prophet Amos, but I reset it in Detroit in 1996. Why can't we do that? Any thoughts on that?
If what do you think about the possible preoccupation with a female heroine? Could it be due to the fact that there's a thread of male dominance in terms of heroes, and let's say there's fortunately less females that have risen to a position of being honored by being in the Bible in the first place. But if females, if we're looking at a trend of women reading and searching for meaning and purpose in the Christian walk, and if they see predominance of male answers, well, this is a great example, he's great, and they're searching a little more thirstily for a female example or something to strive toward or look for values. Could that be one explanation of this preoccupation with Esther in the first place? And she seems to rise pretty high in the Old Testament in terms of even just copy.
I think that's
a book written after.
But you notice who's the one that the characters are doing. Esther, Ruth, and they also did one on Hosea called Redeeming Love, about Hosea marrying a prostitute. It was all set. They're all love stories. You didn't see one about who's the one that drove the peg to the guy? Deborah. No, that's a jail. I'm not seeing anything about it.
Who was? Oh, that's right. That's
Yeah,
right.
that's
Deborah
right.
was a judge.
Deborah's judge. Yeah, I haven't seen one of her, because it's violent, but all these are love stories. Esther's a love story, Ruth's a love story, Hosea's got a love story going on.
It's romance novels for Christians.
Yeah, it's basically Christian romance. I wonder if that's what the, and there was a red too as well.
But what if we just flip the lens and look at it this way? If Hollywood can give us a gay Captain America who's in love with Bucky, why can't we take a biblical hero?
I didn't see that.
Wait,
Wait, over.
They're working on that one.
I haven't seen the new one yet. Am I?
That's not in Civil War.
No,
Okay.
it's not in Civil War.
Comics. They're trying to do it in the
But
comics.
Comics.
if you can do that, and you can take modern mythology that's evolved since really the 20s and 30s when comic books came to predominance in that field. Why can't you take the biblical stuff? And since you're not saying that this is the truth that God has spoken, but because the Bible is the truth, but you're taking it for a modern fiction element to entertain people and maybe bring them into the Bible, why can't you flip the gender roles of some of these people in the biblical stories and make it a female heroine based on Daniel, for example? You know, send the woman into the line and say, give them a strong female character if that's what they're looking for. But then you go back to the other question that you asked about is, why aren't guys buying these books? The fact of the matter is, there's a gigantic market for Christian men who read those kinds of books, except the things they're presented with to read are really mediocre for the most part. It's part of it is when you have people who have never experienced the worlds of action and intrigue, they don't produce quite the same quality of book, they put the same depth to it. And the other part of it is, frankly, and I know some people who have written these books and I probably hate what you're saying, they get a contract from a publisher and says, you know, I need 6 books from you. And I expect a book every 8 months. And they just churn out bricks. They don't care. It comes out, it's good enough to sell, and who's the major market? Women. So they write the feminine aspect into the story. If they came out with some blockbuster male fiction, for Christian fiction, I think it would sell. I think it crosses over. My book is not even marked on Amazon in most categories as being a Christian novel. But it's out there selling. It's competing against thrillers and terrorism novels by guys like Vince Flynn and Joel Rosenberg and all the others. I'm okay with that. That's what we've got to do. You know, why have we been preaching to people that are already inside the church for all these years? Isn't that part of an apologetics ministry? Is to open it up and bring that word out to everyone and defend Christendom based on that? So I think we have not just the opportunity, but the responsibility to at least attempt that.
I'm thinking back to the EOD, we talked about changing to a heroine, and I'm not so sure that's a good idea. I look around my church, and it's like 65% women.
Yeah.
The problem in the church is that the men aren't in the church.
Right.
So I think we should be emphasizing the fact that there are men for the men to look up to in the church.
Yes.
There are men that were strong and brave.
Yes.
I mean,
And they have the
the
same
women
male
seem to be
problems
doing
that-
just fine coming to church, but the men
Men have
don't
to do
go.
it.
You know?
No, that's very true.
And I
But
think that's a big problem.
I think the guy running around here with the floppy hat and the safety vest would be open to our doing that. But the response I've seen from every mainstream Christian publisher at every conference I've gone to is like, so who are the female characters? And when I presented them with Salt and St. Agnes, the response I got was, well, I really like that character. I want her to be much, much bigger in the book. Like, she's a tertiary character. She's a throwaway. I'm gonna probably kill her. So let's not invest the whole
Or Colleen.
Yeah, well, but you know what? Publishers know that fact too. Publishers know the fact that there's only 60, or you know, there's a greater majority of women in the church than men, and they're gonna, you know, market to that.
But it's going to self-reinforce, though.
Yeah.
Like, if
Well,
everything you
It's
write.
a death spiral, baby. We're coming
Yeah.
down and in with a
Yeah, but
dirt.
that's when the market's right. That really is when the market's right to switch gears and give people what they didn't know they really wanted. And I firmly believe there's always a market for awesome.
There's
Yes.
always a market for awesome, but I'd say part of the problem is I never hunt for books in the Christian section.
No.
I'll pass right by.
I don't even
Because
go to
there's
Christian
nothing there that interests me. And so I mean, even if yours was marketed as a Christian book, I probably would never, I would not see it.
Right.
Because I don't think there's anything there for me. It's all buggies and bonnets, like you said.
Right. Well, and you've got a few exceptions. You've got Ted Decker.
And Frank Peretti and stuff.
Yeah, Frank Peretti, and Frank's a charming guy. I had the pleasure of meeting him a few years ago. But you know what? He's not being published in any forms right now.
And I'm actually finding that good. He really.
Yeah.
I don't like
Decker that much either, but.
Yeah.
Well,
I think Ted Decker's
I
very
kept
formulaic and kind of stale, and I find all of his characters pretty flat.
I think that's true for
I like Bill Myers.
a lot of
He
people.
wasn't too bad a couple of his books.
Myers is very good too. But again, look at where all the names are coming up. Look at who we're looking at. We're looking at guys who have lived that life, that can authentically portray that information, and they write well through. And so it's incumbent upon us to learn our craft and produce those books and replace those guys. Because Decker and Freddie and those guys have been around for quite a while. How many years do you still figure you're gonna write?
6, 7 months.
No, not how long Tony said you're gonna write. How long you think you're gonna write?
I like to think I'm just getting started. I really do. I want to wrap up Butch Gregory, then I got 4 or 5 science fiction books in my head. I want to blow up some planes.
There you go. How many years do you think you're gonna write that?
I mean, till the day I die, probably. I mean, hopefully I got another good 30 or 40 ahead of me.
I'm planning on writing for at least the next year.
I can't imagine. I can't imagine ever stopping. You know, I've always done it, and it's what I default to. If I do nothing, I'll just start writing again.
Absolutely.
You know, that's just what I do.
So we've got the time to do it, we can go it, and I think this press and this collection of authors has got that potential to influence the market.
I think that's
we can reach out there and do that.
Yeah.
This is just getting going.
Yep.
This Athanatos thing. If we can keep it going and add to the catalog,
Yeah.
really good stuff. At some point, things catch. I mean, this is true individually.
Yeah.
Everyone I've read and talked to who's written, it's like your 6th or 7th book off before you actually get any kind of flight.
Right.
It's rare that a first or second novel even takes off. It's true of the publishing house too. Eventually, as more and more readers get familiar with seeing that word, it doesn't look bizarre anymore. It's going to catch and take, and I really believe that's true. It might be another decade.
Do you think part of that is that for us to be ex officio recruiters for the press, when we meet other authors or really spectacular talents, we say, hey, I know this guy in Greenwood, Wisconsin that would probably love to at least see your first 10 chapters. Use my name and contact him, and we act as the first line of screening so we can find really great people that can bring something to the table. The people there, that you hear them speak or you read their short story, or oh my God, you might pick them up in Split Kitty magazine and read their flash fiction and go, that's amazing. Why can't we talk to these people? Why can't we reach out and see what else they've got going and bring them in? Because if we get more voices and we get more popular, it benefits all of us. If your Butch Gregory books get into here and start selling huge numbers, that's going to help me because I'm on the
Yes.
same catalog.
I think it's for all of us.
All of us.
A rising tide floats all the boats.
So get on it.
I think it only
What's
takes
up
one.
your game? Come on.
It only takes one break.
It does.
If you're counting on me, I got a day job.
I'm looking at just my personal experience with the books that this press puts out. I had never read any of your books until this festival started getting closer. I thought, well, I'm going to meet these people. I don't look like a complete imbecile, although I've now obviously blown that. But I thought I should read some of these books. You have no idea how delighted I was to find out that each and every one of you has an amazing gift as an author. And you made my summer happy. I started buying them on Kindle and got, oh, there's another one, there's another one. And I haven't gotten through everybody yet, but you know, there's some stuff in that catalog that just is mind-bending above what Harper Collins wrote.
Oh yeah, I read a lot, and what we do here is it's either on par or above.
Absolutely. Yeah, and you think about that, that's basically debut authors with a micro press in the middle of cow country in Wisconsin.
Without a professional editor.
Yeah, and
You know,
cover art that comes from kind of the four corners of the planet.
Where does that come from, by the way? I'm kind of shady on it.
For good cover
There's a
art?
guy in the Philippines who's like a
Philippines.
wizard.
It's like one guy.
Yeah.
And every
One
time a
guy.
hurricane comes to, we pray for him.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't affect our artwork.
Yeah.
Right.
But he's like impressive.
True story.
Yeah.
Well, my cover, I was going to go, I had an agent at the time, and I was planning on going indie because we couldn't get pressed to buy the book. So I did mine on 99designs.com. And I spent $340 all told to get the cover. And I did all the photography for it because I had a mental picture I'm the guy that you don't give a crayon to because it will be unrecognizable. When I'm out as Santa, the kids are coloring. They're like, Santa, you want to color? It's like, no, I'd rather not embarrass myself today. So I get an artist who's actually in Beirut, Lebanon, to do the work on it. So, you know, if the guy in the Philippines ever says, you know, I'm done, we're moving on, there are so many other avenues for getting great cover art. And that's the thing that, one of the things that distinguishes our books from so many other small presses is we do not have somebody with a severe disability in drawing skills doing the covers. And a lot of small presses, the cover art is like business. And that's what kills it, because you're not going to buy the book if the cover is all pastels and it's a calligraphy script on it. You're trying to figure out what the heck could that possibly be about.
Well, and even the big publishing houses are doing the same kind of covers now. They're doing all just the computer graphic covers.
Yeah, it's way cheaper.
It is way cheaper. I think I've never been a fan of them. I love the old cover art of books, like the old Dragonlance Chronicles. Did y'all read that? I mean, I can't remember who's the guy that does the drawing for that, but I love the old TSR fantasy covers. That was I love. I mean, I just like looking at them. I'm just staring at this picture. I mean, they were just fun.
Well, they should tell something of the story.
Yeah.
Or throw a red herring in there. Some of you haven't read the book, so I'm saying this, but there's a big red herring on the cover that I put in there on purpose, just to see if anybody would come back and say, so, where did this ever happen in the book? Did I miss that? And I've had a couple people do it, and I just kind of laugh about it. I like that kind of thing, and I put it on the cover because it amused me. So, you know,
Or you could go with an obscure painting from the Renaissance. That always goes too.
Which is what I usually end up doing. Because the copyright is expired on it.
that picture on your cover is just so freaking bizarre, dude. I love it. I was looking at the catalog and like, oh, I'm reading that one next.
So that
just looks so
beheading of John, right?
No, it's the Judith beheading Holofernes, which is the baseline story for why the crazy women go crazy in the story.
Wow.
Caravaggio, completely bad. I almost said completely bad.
Yes, we are being recorded, so keep that in mind. My editing skills might let some things slip. Well, that's kind of the end of my babble and what I was going to talk about. But, you know, it comes down to why not lift the best right from the best? God wrote the book. Go steal the characters from God and put them into modern settings. You could tell the story and engage people in Christianity without them even knowing it.
Yeah.
You know, the Left Behind series is probably the best example ever of that. It's a New York Times bestseller, and most of the people reading it were not waiting for the rapture when they started the series. But how many people found Jesus through that series? I'm one of them. And I got to thank Jerry Jenkins personally for bringing me back into the fold. So if we can have that influence on people's hearts too, I think that would be
How many people found Jesus by watching the Nick Cage version movie?
nobody. Not one. I think both people that saw it were already.
Yeah. That's one of the problems, and that was mine. I was going to be talking about Christian movies as a whole. I mean, obviously, there's anybody see Risen?
Yeah.
I saw it. I liked Risen.
Very good movie.
Yeah, Risen didn't fall into the cliche territory. It was a nice. Talked about a Roman. Forgot what he was. But yeah,
That movie actually came out in Bangkok.
really. But that was a good. I mean, it had some really solid acting, some really solid writing. But then you have other movies that came out this year. Ever since Passion of the Christ came out, there's been a flood. In fact, Sony, Fox, they all have their faith and inspiration wings of their production companies, and of course we get Hollywood versions like, of course, people name me too.
Noah.
Just recently, Noah came out, and
Exodus.
Gods and Generals, and of course we got one coming up here before too long.
You're gonna rip Ben-Hur.
Ben-Hur, yeah. Good times. There'll be some rock monsters in that one too, or something.
The preview actually looks like they're blending Ben-Hur and Spartacus.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it?
The preview. I saw the preview of the
Mhm.
Star Trek movie, and I thought I was offended before Star Trek ever started.
It was a sad way to go into a perfectly good Trek movie.
Yeah.
And I like Trek, I think, more than you did.
The ending was completely stupid.
But I think I was
No spoilers.
No spoilers.
Because I know how you
No
were.
spoilers, just-
Oh, that was a spoiler? Sorry.
Well, that's a current movie. If you haven't seen Room yet, you're probably not done.
Room.
You're right.
It's on Netflix or Amazon. It's on Amazon.
But
Yeah, anyway.
So back to your topic. Why are Christian movies so awful in most cases?
Well, because I think our we pass over, for the most part, the plot in favor of the message. Where the message should be interwoven in the plot, you know, it shouldn't be so obvious that that people come out saying, "Well, I didn't want to be preached to," you know. They want to be preached to, obviously, the church to be preached to. And I think, unfortunately, even with God's Not Dead, the second one, which I was surprised at. Can anybody name the apologetic masters that were in that movie? That showed up in. Did anybody see the? First of all, did anybody see that movie?
I saw the first one, but I didn't see
You didn't see the second one? You said there was shoot. Who was in that movie?
I recognized him when I was watching, but I don't remember his name.
Yeah, but J. Warner Wallace, he was in there. Who's the guy that wrote the faith for? I don't know if Robbie was Robbie in there. I really can't remember. But I mean, the guy that wrote faith for the Case for Christ, Lee Strobel was in there.
Yes,
Yeah. So they had, I mean, basically a courtroom scene where they had a few of the major apologetic players these days showed up. I mean, again, it was like a Christian zoo. You know, come in here, they'll talk a little bit, and then they're going to go. And I mean, I can see what they were trying to do. It was almost like a reversal of the old.
Inherit the Wind.
Inherit the Wind, right? It was almost like a reversal of that because I mean, she was a high school teacher. But the writing, I don't know. I didn't really care about the characters.
It's very blunt.
Yeah, very blunt, right? Like,
Sometimes it comes off as propaganda, is what it sounds like.
yeah.
You know, and I mean, even though it's propaganda we agree with, I mean, propaganda always stinks because, like you said, the message trumps the plot, and even Aristotle goes back and starts the plot.
Mm-hmm.
It's got to be in the story. And I did a few years ago a little talk about trusting the story. Like, so when I start down to write a story, I have no idea how it's going to end. I mean, a lot of times I have an idea, but that could change. It could change easy. Sometimes I got to go back and rewrite the first stuff, and I've changed it completely. It's like it grows by itself. That's what I did Beyond the Steel Wall. I did that way, where I deliberately did not write down a plot out of the ending. I just wanted to see where the story was going to take me. To kind of experiment with just trusting the story. And you know, we're believers. We're not going to end up writing something that's completely heretical. I mean, it might seem heretical, and it might even push it up a little bit. But I think that's, you know, I think that's where the art comes in, and just trusting God being a lot bigger than our small ideas, and sometimes even in our heart, and even in using the imagination to grasp that bigger God in ways that a theology never will.
I think that comes down to a little bit of what Joe was talking about too, when it comes to the and by the way, I thought of a new a line of books, the buggy and bullets and the bonnets and bombs.
We're going to talk about that.
Okay. But a lot of it is we want to be safe, you know, so that we produce more of the same because it's safe. People will buy it. We won't you know, risk offending people, basically, and that's why we get the same old every time, is because we want to concentrate on the think about the good and think about the pure, but we don't want to think about, you know, the whole picture being the good and the pure. We just want everything to be okay for a 6-year-old, and then it'll be okay for the church group.
The way it was explained to me by somebody who shall remain nameless at Lifeway Books was that you have to write your book in such a way so that if one of the little old church ladies randomly picks your book up and opens to any given page, they won't find anything to offend them, because what happens is they do, and they march up to the counter with it, and they say, "This imbecile has defiled Christ's ministry." And you you look at it, it's like, oh, that's Joe Courtemanche's book. And immediately, when they get one complaint like that, they pull it from the
Oh,
shelves.
yeah.
But the problem is art, by definition, has to be a little thing.
It does, but
It
what
has
I'm,
to be, or it's not art.
I totally agree, but people in Christian fiction and Christian movies
Right.
are writing and
I
producing
agree.
to that line.
So is it art?
It's not art, it's propaganda.
It's also not showing the truth.
Right.
Because most of the world is full of evil, despicable people who do evil things.
Yes.
And if that's
Some
not
of them
part
are
of your
there.
plot anywhere,
Yeah, I remember
you
seeing
don't
it.
have conflict.
I remember seen a movie once. I can't remember the name of it. It was kind of like a Ben-Hur type plot to it. But there was a barbarian dying at the end, and after he has conversion experience. And as he's dying, you see a close of his mouth, and he has this perfectly